think that this is one of the reasons that, again, people find out who they are in their late 40s, early 50s. And I'm being super colloquial, not academic in any way, shape, or form. But I think the give a crap what other people think starts to dissipate with time. And I think that's where people really kind of lean into their true self, is that the mindset of it matters what other people think about me becomes lesser and lesser. I do have a few people in my life that are like, oh, I can do what you do. And I'm like, cool, then don't, do what you want.
Yeah, I'm not
Do
asking
what
you
you
to.
want.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And that's
Just don't
okay.
ask me for money.
Right. But most people, and I will say I have a very supportive group of people in my life. And part of
Yeah.
that is my mindset that I don't make space for people who aren't supportive of my life. But most of the people are very, very supportive and who really are I don't want to use the word envious, but that they live their life vicariously through me. And it's kind of like a fun thing. We'd be like, where are you at? Where are you at this week? What are you doing this week? Oh, you're on vacation again. Oh, it must be nice. It is nice. And it's something I've had to shift my mindset about, because there's guilt sometimes with living your best life. Like,
Mhm.
I'm living my best life. I'm having all of these great experiences, but what am I doing for other people? Should I be here more for this or more for that? And I do have some people in my life, and part of my mindset is like I try to be really honest with people up front about like who I am and like what kind of friend or connector I am. Like, I need low maintenance people in my life. I'm just saying that if you need a friend that's there at your beck and call, if you need a friend who can show up for coffee on Tuesday, every Tuesday, if you need someone who, responds to your text message in 10 minutes, I'm going to disappoint you except for every single time. Like, I'm not that kind of friend. And it's not because I don't love you, care about you. I do. I just don't, my lifestyle doesn't support those type of relationships. And so like the relationships that really are nurturing for me are the people that I haven't talked to you in 4 months, but when we get on the phone or we meet each other for lunch or whatever, it's like we've never, like, no time has passed. We pick up exactly where we left off. And so that has worked. I have, again, a great circle of people who understand, my lifestyle and how I am and who I am, and they accept that. And I have other people who are resentful and who don't understand or need something different. And I'm willing to let go of those relationships without guilt, because that's just not who I am. Again, identity or lifestyle, whatever you want to call it. I just don't have the space for that. And if that's what you need, I'm probably not the one for you. And that's okay. I don't take that personally, right? I'm not going to take that personal. But again, taking this back to even thinking about work and thinking about, like, again, leadership, since that's kind of like the whole mentality of what we're here to do, is to bring this back to work and to how we lead people and how people are led. We also have to have like this understanding that, like, the way that we think in our mindset, our identity and our beliefs and ours doesn't always line up with other people's. And how do we, like, be open-minded about that in a way that people can be safe to be their authentic selves and to adapt their mindset and be open to other information. If I'm a CEO and I say work first, everything is related, like my identity is around, building this company and growing this organization, and everybody who works for me needs to think the same way, I might start to make assumptions about people who prioritize their family life. I might start to make assumptions about people who are like, first of all, CEO, I'm going to act my wage. No, I'm not giving up my weekend because you took on this urgent request that you're not staffed for. So no, I'm not going to, give up my plans to accommodate your request. And now you think less of me because I'm, again, keeping that balance. Like, we really want to be open to the idea that people are going to think differently, but still set, again, expectations around outcomes and set expectations around commitment, and be willing to have discussions about that. But I don't have to agree with your mindset to understand it. I don't have to agree, but I can still accept it, even if I don't if it doesn't have to align. I don't have to align with what other people think and still accept it. And it's not there's not a one right way, I guess is kind of where I'm going. There's not like a one right way to think. There's not like a one right approach to anything. And too many times people, I think, get stuck, like you were talking about, well, you got a job and I have a job, but you get to go out to work and I have to stay home with these kids, right? Like there's too many people who get stuck into or attached to, I guess is the word I'm looking for here. Like they get attached to the way that they're thinking about it, and they're not open to maybe other alternatives, which leads to, again, resentment. It leads to, again, assumptions, stereotype, all kinds of other things that if you don't believe what I believe and if you don't think the way I think, it's obvious that you're wrong. And that causes tons of conflict. I don't have to agree with you. You can be right and I can be right, even if we don't think the same. There are very few circumstances in life where there's only one right answer, like math. Math is one of those things you can't be. 2 + 2 is not going to equal 5, no matter how you try to sum it up. I know there's some mathematicians that are going to probably disagree with that, but what I'm saying is that there are some things that have one solid answer, but for the most part, we work in a multi question world where, or multi-system world, where you can think something and I can think something, and they don't have to necessarily be in agreement, and we can both be right. And I think that mindset of I am free to believe what I believe with evidence, right? Depending on what you're thinking about. And you can believe what you believe because you have evidence. I can still think about our relationship in a different way, right? Again, I'm not stuck to what I believe. I guess that's, I don't believe everything I think. And I can shift my mindset at any time and think about things differently. And then it goes into like the growth versus fixed mindset. Growth versus fixed. So fixed mindset is I'm good at what I'm good at, or it is what it is, and that's all it's ever going to be. Or you can go with the growth mindset that if I put in enough effort, anything can change, or I can develop this new skill, or I can get good at whatever I'm good at, um, if I put in the right amount of effort. People who have a growth mindset tend to be more successful and have more fulfilling lives than people who live in a fixed mindset, which oftentimes that fixed mindset leads people to, again, feeling like a victim, feeling like they're at the mercy of their circumstances versus feeling empowered to do something, do something, even if the circumstances aren't ideal. I didn't grow up with money, period. I grew up, um, the struggle is real. Let me tell you, the struggle was real. And, again, mindset has a lot to do with how you think about those circumstances. So I can say, oh, I didn't have money. I, had this trauma. I had this bad experience. But I also can look at it from a perspective of, yeah, there was a lot of hardship and it taught me so many valuable skills. I learned how to budget. I learned how to, I was playing Chopped, just so you know, I was playing Chopped before Chopped was cool. The cooking show, where they get like a basket of 4 random ingredients and they're like, make something magnificent. I've been playing that my whole life because you open the pantry and you're like, what random weird food do we have? And you can make something tasty out of this because that's all you got, so you can think about it from a deficit based mentality of, oh, poor me, poor pitiful me, I didn't have all of these great things growing up. Or you can think about it like, look at all of that it's taught me, and how that still shows in my life today about how I live and why I can't have 2 homes in 2 countries, not because I was given anything. I worked really, really hard and made a lot of good choices. I made a lot of bad choices, by the way, tons of bad choices along the way, but I also learned from that and made better choices and made good choices where it is possible. I don't make any more money than most people, to be honest with you. I just am really fortunate that I've made some good choices along the way, and that's afforded me the lifestyle I have now. Will this last forever? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I already know how life is. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. I happen to be at a high point today, but it may look completely different for me a year from now. And when that happens, I just have to think about what I'm thinking about and say, okay, what can I do now, given that this is my new reality?
Yeah, I hear you. And I definitely understand that and I identify with that. And just you were talking about colloquially, that's what Jung said. When we reach our mid 40s, early 50s, we stop caring so much about what other people think about us, right? So gradually we have some folks who get it younger, those old souls, and then people like my grandma who just give and give and give to other people to the point where they have never really even thought about how that serves them, right? They just know they have to serve others. And so you have that mindset. But you know, it's important to think about those choices that we make, right? A lot of people say, well, your life is based off of the choices that you make. Sure. But those choices that we made in the past don't have to inform the choices that we make in the future,
Right,
unless we have stuff like a record. Right? you know,
right, right.
so you want to stay away from some of those choices that limit your ability, right? But shit, I mean, just because you have bad credit doesn't mean that you can't get it back, right? I for 10 years, I bought a house, I sold it, and then for 10 years, I just didn't think there's no way I could more than 10 years. There's no way I could get another house. My credit is just a mess, right? And that was my mindset. And one day I just interacted with somebody who owned a gas station and was a realtor as well. And so I was friends with him and I just, I was thinking about buying a house. What are, he said, well, let me run your credit. Oh, yeah, you can buy a house. I'm like, get out of here. Right. I didn't think, because it just wasn't even a thought in my mind. Right. But, we have to recognize as much as we know the value of having that growth mindset, we have to recognize the value to people of the fixed mindset. Right. What does the fixed mindset bring you? It brings you peace and predictability. Right. We talked about SCARF in the last class, that certainty.
Hmm.
When I have a fixed mindset, I know what to expect. I know what's next. If, I know that this box, regardless of how big it is or how swanky or wonderful it is, I know what's going to happen in this box. So I don't have to, you know, think, if I've been taught the limit is the sky, cool. At least I know I have until the sky. Right. And so not to think any higher, "Oh, why are you thinking about that stuff? That's never going to happen." Right. I use the example of pie in the sky. When you think of, that term, Tiff, pie in the sky? Yeah. So when you think of pie in the sky, what does that mean to you?
That's that's the goal. You got to shoot for it. You get that pie, whether you
So
stay in the
something,
sky or not. Yeah.
so something you're aiming for, something that's
Yep. Yep.
if all the stars aligned and everything was perfect, right? Do you know how
Mhm.
many people, when I bring that up, because we talk about the power of cliches and how people take different cliches, right? When I mention pie in the sky, they tell me it's unattainable. It's never going to happen. It's a fantasy. So if if I'm a manager and I'm asking my staff, what's your pie in the sky idea of how you would like this to run, or how you would like to see our office ran, or how we do business? There might be some of us who are right there with us, especially if we don't explain it with okay, well, if everything was running perfectly, this is how we do it. But then we have other people who say, well, why are we going through this? This is a waste of time because that's fantasy. It's never going to happen. So if your definition of pie in the sky is different than mine, do I have people that are buying into growth? All right. No, I have people that are saying, why are you wasting our time with this thought process? It's never going to happen. Right. And so just think about how many people we've engaged with in our careers where we've said, you know, what would you like if you were self-sufficient? What would you be able to do? What would you be able to do with the career? Where do you want to go? And those people look at us like, what the hell are you talking about? I worked at AMPM and then I worked at Shell and then I got laid off there and then I worked at Burlington and and I couldn't stand my boss there and now I'm working for the post office and I hate it, right? And how many people their mentality is I hate my job as opposed to us who we found our passion, we found our purpose, right? I think sometimes if we're not careful, we talk over people because we're we've identified that identity, right? But very often we're talking to folks who might be stuck in that, behavior, right? If my manager says, hey, you need to start coming on time, and they say it a little aggressively, we might say, well, screw you. I don't need this job. I can go find something else. That's behavior, right? We are reacting to our environment. And if we don't have the skill set and the capabilities to overcome that with that thought process of the growth mindset, right? If we, well, this is what I've always known. I can look for a job. I'll find a job. Shoot, minimum wage is $20 an hour now. I can go work at McDonald's, right? And if that's where we are focusing on in the moment, in the now, and a lot of us do, 60% of us, Myers-Briggs folks, about 65% of us are very in the moment, very concrete. I'm dealing with what I'm dealing with now, right? And so we have to intentionally think about what are the long-term implications, right? And so if that's where our heads are, that's where our mindset is, this idea of identity and success. What is success? For some folks, success means I paid my rent this month, right? As opposed to, I'm thinking about, you know, how am I going to furnish my second house? Or where am I going to go on vacation? Or do I want to go on a cruise or do I want to go to Coachella? And I don't want it, I heard Rihanna and Kendrick, they both decided they weren't going to Coachella this year, so we're not going, right? But and I don't care if they have Miley Cyrus or anybody else. I've been hearing all these rumors, right? See, that's my fixed mindset. It's got to be it's got to be Beyonce level or above, because
Right.
We saw Beyonce, and I'm
We
not a
did.
big I'm not in the Beehive, but my wife is, right? If we're going to deal with Coachella and all the dust and everything, then it's got to be something worth it for sure, right? But anyway, so see, that's just even a mindset through experience and what we know. Maybe if we went and the headliner was there, we might be open to experiencing that. That'd be awesome, right? And so we have to be open to new experiences. We have to have the mindset of this is not what I'm used to, but it might be something that is worthwhile. That's an intentional thought. Our brain is designed to keep us safe, right? It's wired to keep us safe, to homeostasis, right?
Hmm.
Homeostasis means we are in the same place so we can predict outcomes, which brings us certainty. So we're not scarfed, right?
Right.
And if we are not intentionally saying, what else is there out there? Then that gets in the way of us interacting with people effectively. I mean, just even like I said, in the human services realm, but even in the leadership realm, if you have somebody who's in a relationship problem, maybe you don't even know about it, and they come to work and they're just not in the right mood or right frame of mind, right? You may think, what's wrong with them? And so you might start forming opinions about who they are and what they're doing without intentionally saying, I wonder what's going on. So rather, it's just like with trauma informed services, rather than what's wrong with that person, what happened to that person? Why is that person acting like that? How can I learn more about what that person's dealing with? Right. And I mean, you see it all the time, right? That's where our biases live, right? Our biases live in our assumptions that we make that people should act like us. And how many people act like us 100%? Right? And this is what I know to be
Almost.
true. And you're acting differently. Nah, I couldn't do that. No, there's something wrong with you. And that's where our brain wants to go because that keeps us safe. Right. And so, how do we deal with that? How do we get people, if we want people to identify their identity, how do we get people to deal with not just their environment, but how they react to the environment and building those skills? It's an intentional thing.
For me, I think it all boils down to being able and willing to engage in some self-reflection.
Mhm.
I'm sure you've heard like everything's impossible until it's not, you know.
Yeah.
I might think something is impossible until I've done it. And then all of a sudden I have a new thought process around it. If you had asked me growing up if I would ever go to Hawaii, I would tell you it's probably just as likely for me to go to Mars. Hawaii to me sounded like this hypothetical place that only rich people went to. And now I'm like, oh, Hawaii, yeah, we're just gonna go for the weekend. It'll be fun. It'll be a good time. not that I go that often, but it's possible now, something that I would have never imagined. Um, but mindset again, we keep this is the topic of the day. We do limit ourselves and we can limit ourselves based on how we think. And going back to what you were talking about, Myers-Briggs, I resonate more with DISC because to me it's a bit more simple. But even the way that we think about like how we plan things and how we look at processes really does dictate again our willingness to engage in making change and moving into uncertainty and change. Like we know how it works right now. It might be dysfunctional, but we know how it works. It's just not serving us anymore. But if we change, then we open up this Pandora's box to all of these what coulda, woulda, shoulda happen. And so it's like, what's our mindset? Are we willing to take chances? Are we willing to make mistakes along the way? Or is my need for certainty so overwhelming that I don't want to take those risks or make those mistakes along the way? I need to know exactly what's going to happen and have that predictability before I can like be on board and have like again my mind wrapped around this thing. Some people just like tell me what to do and I'll do it. Other people have a mindset of I need to understand why I'm doing it and how we're going to benefit from it and what's the outcome or the purpose or the value. And again, how you think oftentimes dictates the way that you're going to communicate about those things. I'm an I on the disc, which I just redid it the other day. I'm an ID now, which tracks. I'm a bit bossy from time to time, so it tracks. But with that I mentality, we do a lot of what we do based on our intuition or what feels right or what we think in the moment. Like I don't need tons of research or validation to make a decision. I'm like, the spirit's moving me in this direction, and but I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to make a mistake and learn from it. And that might be very simple for me in the way that I think and the way that my mind works. But for other people, that could be completely paralyzing. What do you mean it feels right? Like, what evidence do you have that this is the right decision? And I'm like, I don't know, my tummy's tickling in the right way. So they're like, no, 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 no. I'd like some research. I'd like some data. I'd like some evidence-based practices. And I'm like, the vibe is right. The vibe is right. So, like, again, my mindset might be very free and it feels very free to me, but for other people, I'm not expecting them to think like I think. I'm not expecting them to think like I think because trust me, this is a lot of work, I have to do things 3 or 4 or 5, 17 times to get it right because I'm going with the vibes versus looking at again what have other people done? How's it work for them? I'm not always doing that legwork because that's just not my mindset. I understand that though. And that's I think the part of the mindset shift is getting away from the assumption that everybody thinks the way I do. I hate this idea of common sense. That's just common sense.
Mm.
Like common sense is imaginary. Can I just throw that out
Yeah.
for all of the
It ain't
people?
common.
It's
It ain't
imaginary.
common. Yeah.
And it's not. And
Yeah.
even if you have common sense, Sean Aker, one of my favorite authors, says common sense doesn't equal common action. Even when you know it's the right thing to do, it doesn't mean that you're going to do it. Why? Because, again, all of these other factors come into play. And so for me, the biggest, I think, shift in my life and how I've come to where I'm at today, which again, ask me in a year, I'm going to be a completely different person. I'm in a constant state of metamorphosis. Like you mentioned earlier, like the core of who I am has stayed the same, but how I approach life changes from year to year. But part of that is that I am very open-minded. And that is not something I can say has always been true. Before it was my way or the highway. If you don't think the way I think, you're obviously wrong, obviously. Um, but with time, that has changed to be very, very open-minded and curious, not even open-minded, but really curious about where other people are coming from. I have a very strong personality. Anybody who's hung out with me more than 20 minutes knows that I have a strong personality and I still am very open-minded and curious. And I always want to know where other people are coming from. I want to know your perspective. I don't have to agree with it, but I want to know where you're coming from. I want to understand people a bit better. and I'm not stuck to my belief system. And I think that's very, very different from maybe how I have felt over the last 10 or 15 years. I am not stuck to my belief system. I will change my mind given the right information. There are some, like, again, values that will stick with me forever and always, right? So, like, I never want to win at somebody else's expense, right? You don't have to lose for me to win. I don't want to ever put people in a worse position. Like, your life is worse off because you met me. Like, that's something that I really, I want you to be better because you've met me. I want your life to be better because we've interacted. So that's something that's going to stay important to me. But that open-mindedness and curiosity, I think, is really what has been the mindset shift that's allowed the blessings, for lack of a better word, to come into my life. Is that pie in the sky is delicious. It's my favorite. It's not impossible. It is possible, but I have to be willing to put in the effort to get there. And I want, as often as I can, to encourage people to engage in that self-reflection and find out, what limiting beliefs do you have that you've put on yourself? What limiting beliefs have you put on other people that keep them small? What environment are you creating? What are the beliefs that you can maybe let go of, or the values that don't serve you anymore? How do you choose what identity that you want and make choices that support that identity and move away from things that don't support the identity of who you are? How do we create, again, that space where you can be the best version of yourself, but not get attached to that, knowing that the best version of yourself might look different 6 months from now? And you kind of grow through those phases and be open to possibility. And I think the most important is that if you want something new, you have to have the mindset and the willingness to do something different, right? If the way that you're living and the outcomes that you have are working for you, and you're like, I love this predictability, I love knowing what the next day holds, I love, you know, this, then do that. It's working for you. But if you're unhappy, or you're unsatisfied, or you're feeling stifled by whatever's happening around you, if you can't change that, change the way that you think about it, and be willing to be open to maybe new possibilities. Or maybe you don't like the pie that's in the sky, change it to a cake in the flake. I don't know. I can't think of anything cute to say there, but be willing to
Cake in the
maybe
lake.
a cake in the lake, exactly. And you adjust your expectations to something different. One of the things that I say in my classes, which is kind of embarrassing, but here I go. I always tell people I keep my expectations really low so that I'm never disappointed. And I say that because if I walk into a classroom to do a class, or I walk into a coaching session with the expectation that everybody's going to take something away, or everybody's going to resonate with the course, or everybody's going to walk away with something that they can, adapt or change in their life, then I'm going to be disappointed every single time, because I can't please everybody. I'm not going to resonate with everybody. Not everybody appreciates my style, my personality, my communication techniques, not everybody's going to appreciate that. And that has nothing to do with me. And so I always say, if one person gets one thing out of a course that I teach, or a coaching session that I've done, if they get one thing out of it, then I've done my job, and I can be satisfied with that. And that has helped my mindset tremendously, because I'm never disappointed.
I That's been my mantra the last few years, is I don't expect anything. I don't ex-
Right.
have I have no expectations about anything that I'm doing. I don't expect people to always like me, to always respond to me. I don't expect that they know something that I think they should know. Even if you've been in human services 20 years and you've never heard this, you've been a manager for 10 years and this has never been crossed your, no. You know why? Because every time I do that, I'm judging somebody. All right. I got a buddy who, we talk a lot, and he's one of those folks who wants to regularly, he took a personality test and he's a bear, right? So he He wants people around him. He wants to share with them. And I'm definitely more of an introvert, right? But I value his friendship. So, I mean, I accommodate those things when I can, right? But, you know, he, we talk about movies and, if he's never seen a movie, you've never seen The Godfather, right? And he'll just thank you for judging me. So that's what he does now, right? Because we've had that conversation. But just think about that. Oh, you don't, we were in the same training. You didn't learn this, right? Or, oh, it should only take you 20 minutes to get through this, get through this. And meanwhile, it's taking you 3 hours. If that person says, oh, what took you that long? That's a judgment. People, it's when we are in our fixed mindset, we don't have to be judged about learning new things, right? We are confident where we are. That's why you hear about, I've been here 20 years. This has, it's always been like this. No, it hasn't. It's just your mindset has always been like that, which is especially as you're a leader. How do you show up for other people as a leader? You have to stop thinking about what's my identity for myself. When you take on a leadership role, what is my identity to the other people who I influence? Because especially in government service, we are always looking up to that next person. And if we do not show up for that person in a way that is engaging and talks about having a growth mindset, then we are going to continue to limit our staff. Our staff, talk about societal pressure. How do we respond to our bosses? What is our workplace culture? We've spent a lot of time talking about culture. Culture comes from leadership, right? Very rarely does it start from the bottom up. Sometimes it does, sometimes it starts from the middle, right? But most, especially in government service, hierarchical cultures, people look up chain of command. How are they supporting this? If they're not going to support it, well, then I'm not either, because I'm not wasting energy into something that is not going to be implemented, right? So if you are in a process where you are in some type of leadership or influential role and you have something that might be a possibility for improving your services, improving your program, and your first thought is, let's keep it where it is. What are you missing? What are you missing? You know, when we well, we're going to spend. I'm sure we're going to have another session where we talk about change, right? But
I was just
one
thinking
of
that. I swear you just
yeah,
read my mind.
yeah, yeah, and but one of my favorite stats about change is that 2/3 of all change initiatives in corporations fail. So only a third of them are actually successful intended with the intended goals, right? And so the other 2/3, they might end up with different outcomes than what you intended, right? So in essence, that's a failure. Of those 2/3 that fail, 95% of those had well thought out plans to implement them. So we're going to have a rollout. We're going to, we should have that going for us. So what does that tell you if almost all of them have good plans and they still fail, right? What's your mindset? What's your mindset in the communication? You have a good rollout for a plan, it gets passed down to senior leaders to middle level. Hey, look, this is what they want us to do, so we got to do it. I know we have to learn this new stuff, but we're just gonna have to deal with it, right? It's the job. Just be glad you have a job. The at least mentality, right? The Brene Brown stuff, at least, right? And if that's how you're communicating with your staff, what are your expectations for them to actually follow through with this and to be successful in implementing that new program? Maybe you don't have any positive, expectations of them completing this. Maybe you're just like, maybe if we fail, then they'll leave us alone. If that's who you are, God bless you. But I do not ever want to work for you. I can't work for you. I've worked for people like that. I can't do that. That's why I work for myself now, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm still, I mean, even though I am my own boss, I have people that I answer to because I work for different organizations. So sometimes I got to play their games. Sometimes I got to, you know, come up with things that I never would have, put on other people, right? But I recognize this is the path that I've chosen, right, to follow. And how am I serving my purpose? Sometimes I got to play people's games. That's the thing. A lot of people, even if they have an idea of who they want to be, there might be some some things that have to happen, right? If you come into a new organization and you're a low person on the totem pole, but you want to be at the top. Guess what? The low person on the totem pole, what flows downhill, right? You might
Mm-hmm.
have to work those double shifts. You might have to work, you know, swing shifts. You might have to be on call. You might have to do the things that other people don't have to do. And they look at you like, oh, sorry, you have to do that. You might be frustrating. But if that's where you want to be and that's what your ultimate goal is, then your purpose will win out. And as long as you're supported in that, right? And that's just even getting to where we are now, right? I started working for our the organization that we both work for, as a full-time employee somewhere else. I went out and tried to, when I was working on my dissertation, I went out on my own. And then it didn't work out. The recession hit, all the training budgets froze up in the state. And so I was left hanging out there. I had to go back to a full-time job, right? Which was fine. I found a couple full-time jobs, but I never just said, okay, well, I can't do this anymore. I just said, hey, look, I need a full-time job. So my availability to you is limited, right? And I would use some of my vacation time to be able to still. I remember I was working 5 days a week for a training organization while I was working. I'm 5 days a week, 5 days a year working for a training organization while I was still working full time. And I would use my vacation time to facilitate those 5 days a year. Why? Because I wanted them to still know that this is where I am. I still wanted to grow in that job. And when I got to the point where I was able to, have those contacts, I was able to do that. And that's what I did, right? I got to the point where I said, okay, I can do this on my own. I have contacts. Hey, look, I can give you my full availability. Oh, great. Because we have 4 years of, you know, the, that organization that you worked with 5 days a year, thinking about how you're wonderful and how you're great. Awesome. So you guys have a good thought about me. Let's expand this. How do we make that happen? Right. And then I got my hustle on and acquired more other places. And that's another thing. I think four of the agencies that I work with are places that I used to work full time.
Mm.
Right. Or I had more availability for them in the process. I've, worked for them full time, left, come back because, the one thing that I was taught at a very early age was never burn a bridge.
Right.
Right. And so I don't walk out of an organization on my last day saying, bye, bitches. Right. And just, no, that's
Oh,
not who
that's
we
not the
are.
right way to do it.
I was blessed not to have learned that lesson very early in
Oh,
my life. Right. Don't burn a bridge. Right. But because you never know when you have to cross back over. Right. So that's been something that has kept me in good stead, even if decisions are made that I don't 100% agree with, or, whatever else it is, it's always been something where, okay, so, if I tell them exactly how I feel, how I, and the way that I want them to hear me, right? If I want to let down my professional, wall and, give them Carl up to 12, you know, how's that going to affect what it is that I want to do later in life? Who is it that I want to be? Right. So sometimes you got to eat the crap that they feed you until you get to the point where you can say, okay, I'm in a position now where other people don't have to eat crap. Right.
yeah.
It's yeah, I had that conversation last week with folks, to look, you may not necessarily enjoy where you are at this moment in your life, but you guys are middle level, senior level leaders. When I was in Orange County at the time, you guys are middle level, senior level leaders. Who knows, 5, 10 years from now, you're going to be in positions where the things that we're talking about now, you're able to impress upon other people. Right. And so, thinking about that, I mean, right now you're in the midst of maybe some limiting beliefs that other people have that keep you or your program stifled. When you're in a position to make those changes, how will you be ready? How will you be prepared? What are you going to utilize that affects your staff in the way that you want to be affected right now? Right. And that's not a concept that of people, I mean, how many people just get up and hit their snooze button twice and get to work on time and just, okay, I have this workload. I have all these emails. I have all these people coming in. I put out fires all day and I just deal with it. Right. Well, if you had your druthers, how would you, if you had a pie in the sky, right? Would you want to deal with it? What are some things that you could maybe do to not have to deal with that, right? For other people to not have to deal with what you dealt with, to make this more engaging, to make this a better environment, to make this a better workplace for everybody. Start having that conversation if that's where you want to be. And not every manager's in it to be a manager, right? Yeah, I mean, just think about how many people we know became managers because it made more money, right? Or, I shoot, I was in a county where we were talking about stuff and somebody said in a scenario, said, you know what? I've been working for other people for 27 years. I'm in a position now where I'm a lead. I'm going to make that person deal with what I had to deal with all those years ago. And, after the meeting, like 5 or 6 people came up to me and said, we work for her. Is there any way you can talk to her? Because they hated it. And if we're worried about not staffing or being understaffed, not filling job recs, and you have folks that, well, I didn't get this when I was coming up. I don't know. Do I have to babysit you and handhold you? I don't want to work for you either. I'd rather work for somebody else who's going to support me. Right. So, and I have options now. I could work from home. I could work from home and not pay childcare, not have to deal with a commute. Right. There are many different opportunities for me to do if, so if you tell me at least I should be glad I have a job, you know what? I will always have a job. I will not have to deal with you as a boss. And that is a bonus in my life. So if that's where we are, if we have multiple people leaving all the time, well, it's just one of those things where people leave a job. Is it, can we look into that a little more? We do a little more research. Is everybody that is in your role or in a similar role experiencing the same thing that you are? And if so, why? Is it a program issue? Is it a resource issue? Is it a you issue? Right.
I when you I don't mean to go backwards right now, but when you said I learned to never burn a bridge, I just thought about my last company that I left. Uh, and I went out with a blaze of glory. I did my resignation letter was 11 pages long, if that gives you a clue about how disgruntled I was with the whole system. And I remember a very kind person that I worked with trying to help me. She says, Tiffany, it's never good to burn a bridge. And I said, you know what? Sometimes the best light comes from a burning bridge. And if I ever come back here, I have fundamentally failed in life. And so I'd rather burn this bridge down so I can never come back here. Because if I do, something has fundamentally gone wrong in my life if I ever show back up at these doors. And I haven't gone back, thank God, knock on wood. But again, it's the way that you think about things, right? I have great relationships with almost every other employer. This one, I was just like, it was such a horrendous experience for me. I hope to never come back here, ever, ever in the history of ever. Um, so let's talk about what to do now. I mean, I think it's important. We experience things in such different ways. How do you change your mindset? It's not just so simple of let's just think about things a different way and it happens. It does really take some time, effort, and energy. And I love what you said about as a leader, as a manager, like your mindset does impact. It's more than just what you think, but how are other people experiencing the way that you think? I think it's such an important concept there. The idea of like, I suffered trauma, so let me traumatize you is such a damaging mindset versus I suffered some trauma here. I want to make it better for the next people. I think that's where the real magic happens. So, um, I brought up earlier, like the idea of self reflection. There are like questions that you can engage with and ask yourself to think about how you're thinking and maybe go a little bit more in depth with your own thought process and maybe again keeping the things that serve you well that give you the outcomes that you want but being open to maybe thinking about things differently. I hate to be super duper biased towards this, but working with a coach can really help you. Carl and I, aside from being instructors, both of us are coaches, and having like someone who can sit across from you and be non-judgmental and really help you think about what you're thinking about is really, really important. Both of us have benefited not just from being coaches, but being coached. And I think being coached has helped me rethink a lot of things in my life. So working with a coach, of course, is one option, but it does cost money. And if you don't have that, then you don't have that. But there's other options. It's not the only way. Um, I think even engaging in your own reflective practice of thinking about your thought process. Journaling is a great way to do this. You can again sometimes think about it before you're going to bed. But if I had to like start people off with like some questions to process, to think about, one of the first questions I would always encourage people to think about is like, what do we know for sure? What do I know for sure about the situation? And really kind of separate like those stories that you're telling yourself from the reality of what your situation is. Um, because the stories are what causes us the most suffering and the most pain in our realities. It's the judgments and the assumptions that we're telling ourselves about that keep us stuck. So that would be always one of my first ones. What do I know for sure? Or what stories am I telling myself here that you can maybe let go of? Some of your stories may be true, but again, rethink them. How do I know it to be true? What facts do I have? How do I know this for sure? Check in with yourself. Another one that I really, really love is is what else could be true? What else could be true? Again, going into those limiting beliefs and really challenging yourself to look at a different set of reality. If I am stuck on, I can't, I won't, it's not for me, it could never happen, then you're going to have behaviors that support that. But if you think what else could be true, it opens up possibilities that may have not otherwise been apparent. So, again, this really makes us look at alternative realities, especially when we're feeling stuck that this is just, it is what it is, and there's nothing else out there. What else could be true gives you the option to think about possibility. So those are two of my like top two questions. My third question here that I would encourage people to really kind of reflect on here is, what is it that I really want? What is it that I want? Because sometimes we get stuck in the mindset like this is not ideal. This is not like it could, should, would be a different way if other people or whatever. But we sometimes can articulate what we don't like about a situation, but not necessarily what it is that we want. So what is it that I want? And what am I willing to do to get there? Right? What am I willing, not, it has nothing to do with anybody else, but what am I willing to do to get to that other desired state, whatever that looks like? And then the last one is really for me a mindset shift and change. I think a lot of times when something new is coming, or we know that we need to change, or we know we need to change in our life, or it's a change happening like maybe in the workplace that we're not necessarily in love with, but it's the mindset shift of not just thinking about why we can't or why we shouldn't or why we shouldn't have to, which gets us stuck on again fighting reality. Like instead of thinking about why you can't or why you shouldn't have to make these changes, but to shift your mindset to how could I make this successful? How could I make this work? So in the sense of going back to your example from earlier, the brain, talking about people who maybe are living in poverty that are going into employment and they're getting a lot of feedback from their environment, their social circle, the people around them going, oh, now you work, you don't have time for us. You used to be a good friend, now you're a horrible friend. You used to be a good parent, you're a terrible parent because you're always gone at work. Like it's easy for us to justify all of the negative things that come with change, right? Like, oh, gone 40 hours a week plus my commute, plus I'm tired when I get home. But instead of saying like, let's stick in the status quo, but how could I make it work? So yes, I'm tired, and how can I create some energy for the things that are important? Yes, I don't have as much time to do all of the things I used to be able to do because I'm spending time at my workplace. And how could I make time for the things that are really important in my life when I'm not at work? What are some things I can let go of that maybe take my time but really don't add value to my life? What are some relationships that I can eliminate? As hard as that sometimes feels, but what relationships can I maybe cut off or minimize to relieve some of the negative impact so I can really embrace this new reality for what it is. I mean, that's one example, but if I think about like just something as simple as going on a diet, right? Going on a diet, I need to lose 20 pounds for a wedding or whatever. Well, here's why it's hard for me to lose weight. I don't have time for exercise. I don't have time to cook. I can't meal prep. I can think about all of the reasons or excuses of why I can't, but how could I shift that mindset to, well, what can I do? Right? Maybe I can't afford to have a dietitian. Maybe I can't afford to have somebody come and work out with me. Maybe I can't afford a gym membership. But here's what I can do. I can walk instead of drive. I can make, different choices at the grocery store. Maybe I can phone a friend who, wants to spend more time with me and I don't have time, but maybe we can start a workout group, even if we do it online. Like we have options, is what I'm saying. And so for me, that's the mindset shift that is the most helpful, is getting away from all of the reasons we can't, why it's hard, why we shouldn't, and move into how could we, what are my options? That's my input for today. That's all I got for you.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And so with those, just, being in the moment, right? So what do we know for sure? What else could be true in the moment, right? Not what have we known. It's not about living in the past, right? What is it that I really want now, right? What am I willing to do to get there? And rather than how could I make this, how can I make this successful? When we are in our positive bag, when we are in our affirmative bag, we are much more likely to actually make it happen, right? And so, I mean, those are so powerful. They're powerful thoughts. And it's something to stay in that belief. What are some things that I want to do? And you'll hear people, oh, you're doing too much, or you have kids, you don't have time for this, or anything else like that. I've seen too many success stories of people who have worked worked their tail off to get to where they are in life by recognizing that the sacrifices that I make are worth it, right? What do I need to stop doing? Who do I need to stop listening to? I, you're not
Yeah.
always safe. You might have your family members might be the people that are the closest people to your life and the biggest people stifling your growth.
Yep.
You may not be able to stop um, loving them or stop interacting with them, but you don't have to listen to them. You don't have to absorb what they are telling you, right? You have better options. And, just, like you said, you left that organization. If I ever come back here, there's a problem. My mindset is if I ever come back here, I'm going to be in a position to make some changes to address that problem. And maybe that person that is the reason why I left, that's the first change I'm about to make. Right. So these are that's just, that's how I would have come
Yeah.
at it. But we all have different ways of coming at things. How do we make this something that works for us and for the people that we influence, right? That circle of control, which we're going to be another conversation. I can't wait to have that one either, right? But how do we influence those things? How do we control what we control, and how do we influence things that maybe aren't 100% in our control, but we can help for the better? And we may not necessarily be able to do that today or tomorrow, but when we're in position to do it, how are we going to be able to strike when the iron's hot? Right. And that's a different mindset. It's a change in mindset, but you have to believe that you can accomplish it. right? And I've seen people accomplish things they never thought that they were ever able to do, whether it's professionally or personally. And so, don't tell me you can't do it, right? Unless there's a physical reason you cannot do something, right? I am too out of shape to climb Mount Everest. But if I really wanted to, I've probably got about 9 good summers left to really get in shape to be able to climb Mount Everest. 9 summers, right? So, but even then, that's limiting. Who knows, right? Maybe when
Yes.
I'm 66, maybe that's when I'll get there. I
Right.
have to believe that I want to do it.
Right.
So, all right. Well, we have our questions. We have our marching orders. So, how are you feeling about this, Tip?
I'm feeling good. I actually am feeling very roadrunner right now, and the my strong personality is coming out because my last thought here is, as the roadrunner, I'm gonna keep on running, beep 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 beep, and just doing my thing. And my mindset has always kind of stuck to, I'm gonna thrive no matter what. And for anybody who is being Wile E. Coyote, may you have the life that you deserve. May you continuously, um, may you continuously get to live the consequences of your choices. And so if you spend your mindset hating on somebody else, if you spend your time, again, your mindset is to cause harm to others, may the Acme box always fall on your head. And that's going to be my mindset. So, as our friend Beyonce says, when you play me, you play yourself. So I'm going to keep on beeping through this life, and that's just going to be my mindset. I'm here. I'm here for a good time, not a long time, and you know, keep it moving. That's my mindset. Keep it moving.
And just like my idol Bugs Bunny, I'm gonna stick my fingers in your gun and it's gonna blow up in your face. So
Exactly. So hate on haters. No, I'm just
that's right.
joking. I'm feeling too sassy now. I think it's time for
That's
lunch.
right. What can we accomplish? What are we gonna go take over the world right now, right? Yeah, we're
We
definitely
are.
into
We are
that.
going to go
So,
take over the world.
all right.
I have a great week. Yeah.
Well, until that day happens where we are taking over the world, I'm Carl.
And I'm Tiff. And if a
And
box falls on you, ask yourself, what did I do to deserve this?
if you
Keep it
look up
real.
and you see, and if you look up and see Tiff dropping it on you, you say, okay,
The Roadrunner never drops the box. The box
that's right.
falls.
It
The
just
box falls.
sticks his tongue out at you. Yeah.
I'll say it.
All
Yep,
right. Keep it
exactly.
real,
So
y'all.
keep it real.